Our top focus at this hour, in the biggest blow to the Al-Qaeda since its founder Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, United States has now confirmed that they have killed Al-Qaeda leader and bin Laden's successor Ayman al-Zawahiri. The Al-Qaeda leader was killed in a US airstrike in Afghanistan over the weekend. Officials said Zawahiri was on the balcony of a safe house when the drone fired 2 missiles at him. Other family members were present, but they were unharmed as of now. Now, while delivering a speech at the White House, US President Joe Biden said that justice has now been delivered and the terrorist leader is no more. Biden said US intelligence officials tracked al-Zawahiri to a home in downtown Kabul where he was hiding out with his family. Biden further said that he approved the operation last week and it was carried out on Sunday. Biden has confirmed that there were no civilian casualties in the entire operation which took place.
My fellow Americans, on Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. 1 week ago, after being advised that the conditions were optimal, I gave the final approval to go get him. And the mission was a success. None of his family members were hurt, and there were no civilian casualties.
Now, Biden further detailed al-Zawahiri's role in leading al-Qaeda since Osama bin Laden was killed by US forces in 2011, including calling on followers to attack the US and allies in videos. He further said that no matter how many years it takes, if someone is a threat to the United States, they will not be spared. Listen in.
No matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
Zawahiri was one of the world's most wanted terrorists and the main mastermind of the September 11, 2001 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. Now, the drone attacks is the first known American strike inside Afghanistan since US troops left the country in August 2021. Now, al-Zawahiri's death raises questions about whether Zawahiri received sanctuary or safety from Taliban following their takeover of Kabul last year. US officials say that senior Taliban officials were very much aware of his presence in the city and they rather provided him a safe haven. In a statement, Taliban spokesperson condemned the US airstrike, calling it a violation of international principles. And for more on this, joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Fred Flitz, who is the president of Center for Security Policy. He is also the former NSC Chief of Staff. We're also being joined by correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. Welcome to the broadcast. Now, my first question is for you, Susan. The Taliban has reacted to the drone strike, condemning it. And the tweet by the Taliban regime came just a few minutes before Biden's press conference where he revealed about the operation. Can you tell us about the tweet and the timing of it specifically?
So initially we learned that there had been a drone operation around Kabul by the CIA. We didn't know who was targeted. And then AP was the first to report that it was Ayman al-Zawahiri. Reporters here say during the weekend at the Pentagon, they were sworn to secrecy and they actually knew it was Ayman al-Zawahiri. While the Taliban spokesperson condemned the attack shortly before the United States announced that this incident occurred Monday afternoon. The Taliban spokesman made that announcement before the U.S. announcement without saying it was Ayman al-Zawahiri, raising suspicion that the Taliban were informed of this incident during the weekend. They did create some sort of confusion that there was more than one drone strike. But then again, you know, it raises the question, first of all, how is it that Ayman al-Zawahiri was able to stay and move in and around Kabul for this long? And also, the fact that we have to learn more about how this operation was carried out and from where. And who was it that provided the intelligence? Speaking to reporters on Monday evening, senior administration officials said that they had a number of independent sources that led them to Ayman al-Zawahiri. But we'll learn more in the days to come.
Right, Susan, let's get our guest Fred into the discussion as well. Fred, let's talk about the timing of the drone strike. Now, Nancy Pelosi is on an Asia tour as of now. My question to you is, what ramifications will the incident have on her security?
I think timing is an interesting question. I don't think it will affect Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which I understand will happen soon. But there's some concern in the U.S., the incredible coincidence that this is occurring 1 year after the disastrous U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I don't think that there's a link, but I think the U.S. Congress is going to be investigating how this happened, what the timing of it was, and are we sure that civilians were not killed in the attack? We've been told in the past that drone strikes didn't kill civilians. We later found that that isn't true. We had to sort all this out. But on the surface right now, it looks like a big win for President Biden.
Right. My next question is for you, Susan. Now, it's a major conquest for the Biden administration, and we are pretty much focusing on the timings. Now the operation takes place, the mission takes place at a time when the Biden's approval rating had dipped to quite low numbers. How do you see this mission impacting his political career?
Yeah, President Biden is facing historic low numbers domestically, and whether, this is a foreign policy win for him, this is, as some call it, his bin Laden moment, as former President Obama had. But, one observer said that ultimately this doesn't really bring down prices and inflation for ordinary Americans. A foreign policy is important. But it also raises the question, notably regarding Afghanistan, because of its faulty withdrawal 1 year on. While the Biden administration will play on this as a win, it does raise questions on whether or not his over-the-horizon capabilities will really work. Remember, this was a CIA operation on the one hand. And on the other hand, the question remains that how is it that 1 year on, Ayman al-Zawahiri was able to really again, freely move around Afghanistan. And this is also, again, in the backdrop of 20 years of war. So, those are the questions that still remain. But there's no doubt that, yes, I agree, this is a win for the Biden administration for now. And he'll definitely play this issue to the American voters, whether or not, they'll see this as something that'll sway their votes. It's highly unlikely. Foreign policy isn't really a main component, notably at a time when Americans are really facing kitchen table issues right now and have a lot on their plate to deal with.
Right. I would also like to bring in our Pakistan Bureau Chief, Anas Malik, into the discussion. Anas, bring us up to speed as to how the operation panned out. It took place on Sunday, and which was the house that was targeted? We are learning that the Taliban knew about his presence in the city and he was given a safe spot. Take us through how the operation took place on Sunday.
Well, roughly about 36 hours back on Sunday morning at about 2 a.m. we saw Kabul being jolted by at least two explosions, and they were being said that it was the IS who had carried a drone strike. We saw initially that the IS telegram channels, not the official ones, but that operate at a second tier, they were rejoicing the fact that the IS had conducted a drone strike in Kabul. Now that would have raised a lot of alarm bells, because just the month of Muharram is starting, the Islamic month of Muharram is starting. So an ISIS drone strike would have been historically a headache, given that the ISIS had been historically targeting the Shiites. But as the story unfolded, as the day progressed, we heard that it was in the vicinity of Sherpur. This was yesterday. It was in the vicinity of Sherpur, which is just adjacent to Wazir Akbar Khan and in front of the green zone. So if I just explain you the demography or the alignment of the area, Sherpur and Wazir Akbar Khan are adjacent to each other. In fact, the inner rows of at least 3 inner rows connect Wazir Akbar Khan, which is a considerably upper class posh area, to Sherpur. Sherpur is the same area that had housed the house of Bismillah Muhammadi that was bombed by the Taliban on the 2nd of August last year. Just a year back, I was there. We were covering it from the ground. And this drone strike came in the Sherpur area, very near to Wazir Akbar Khan. Initial report suggested that it was on the Taliban police chief. But that was not the case. This is a 4-story house or a villa, which has 17 rooms, 17 rooms that was targeted by the US forces through a drone strike. What we know that multiple rockets were fired, and now President Biden has come out and he has made a statement. The Taliban are tight-lipped about it. Yesterday night we saw a statement from Zabiullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesperson. In fact, Bilal Karimi, the deputy spokesperson of him, he also confirmed that there was indeed a drone strike, and they called it as a violation of the Doha Agreement. But coming to the question that Susan was raising, I was just listening to that. It would be no surprise in case if Ayman al-Zawahiri was indeed in Afghanistan or was indeed in the capital city of Kabul for one very reason. Following the Taliban takeover, the ease of passage to elements like him or from the Al-Qaeda is quite considerably easy, especially on the 3 border crossings, be that be the Tajik one, be that be the Uzbek one, or be that be the Pakistan one as well. Of course, Pakistan shares the longest border, so it would not be a surprise of having his presence in a port city such as Kabul itself.
Right, Anas, now under the 2020 Doha deal, the Taliban promised not to allow Afghanistan to be used again as a launchpad for terrorism. But experts believe that the group never broke their ties with Al-Qaeda. And according to some US officials, Taliban knew about al-Zawahiri's location and they rather provided him safety. Can you give us some light on this?
Well, it would be no surprise that Taliban already knew about his location. In fact, a section from the top tier would have known and could have possibly been given some security as well as what we have seen in the case previously. But to say that it would have been in a structural format, that I think that would have merely been an overassessment. But you rightly mentioned, I asked the Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid in the second press conference. In fact, in the very first press conference that he had done, and that was on the 17th of August, if I remember that correctly, or last year. And I said, what happens to your relations with Al-Qaeda? If we can just play out, if the production team can just play that out from the 17th of August, the very first press conference by Zabiullah Mujahid, and I asked him, what happens to your relations with Al-Qaeda? And he says that he said, the Zabiullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesperson, said that we would not let them be present here, and we would not let them breed, and rather address the concerns of the international community. But Al-Qaeda is not the only one that has been a headache for the region. We've previously seen about the presence of the Tehrik-e-Taliban fighters. We've seen about the presence of the ETIM or the Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement, then other terror organizations which are a threat to that on that northern strip of Afghanistan. So that is something that people believe that is used as a leverage by the Taliban to coerce the international community to talk to them. So therefore, the claim by the US admins, it would not be rather shocking, but it is in line with what we have been seeing at least in the past year.
Right, Anas. I would now like to bring our guest who's live with us from Washington, D.C. Fred, my question to you is that where is Al-Qaeda right now in terms of its threat to West and the United States? What lies ahead for Al-Qaeda after its chief was killed?
Well, there were reports that they were already looking for a replacement for Zawahiri because he was ill. And I think that's always in the cards. We are not able to knock off these terrorist leaders, and they're quickly replaced. But I think a question here is to talk about whether this marks a change in Biden administration policy on the question of terrorism and radical Islam as terrorism. Will they make this a higher priority and recognize that these groups thrive in poorly governed areas of the world, like Afghanistan, and especially in Africa, where Al-Qaeda and ISIS are making great inroads? If this indicates the Biden administration recognizes that and will move terrorism higher in its list of national security priorities, I'd be quite pleased.
Right. My last question is for you, Susan. Now, the drone strike comes just a year after U.S. troops withdrew from the Afghanistan soil, and it has changed counterterrorism in the landscape that presents new challenges right now. What are your inputs on this?
Well, as mentioned, there's growing concern right now because of the faulty withdrawal from Afghanistan by the Biden administration and the vacuum that it left. We knew that this was going to happen. We knew that it was going to become a safe haven for terrorism. And because, quote unquote, new terrorism, which has been prevalent in the last 20 years, is so asymmetrical, one has to wonder whether or not the killing of al-Zawahiri, while it's very significant and might be a defeat to Al-Qaeda because of the ideological nature of it, and Al-Qaeda wants that, it'll mushroom on and it will continue. Al-Zawahiri is dead right now, but we also know through the United States, through the United Nations, again, because of the way the Biden administration withdrew from Afghanistan, there are tens of thousands of terrorist recruits going into Afghanistan, and they're joining not only Al-Qaeda, but groups like ISIS and ISIS-K, something that the Security Council is warning against, the UN Secretary General is warning against, many here in the United States are warning against, and, we'll have to wait and see whether or not, as our guest mentioned, if Biden's counterterrorism efforts will be more serious.
Right. Thanks, Susan, Anas, and Fred for getting us up to speed on this. We will, of course, be tracking this throughout the day. Thanks very much.